Well, good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you might be watching. Welcome back to here. It's a lovely, sunny, warm spring morning, afternoon I should say, and just wanted to bring you up to date. It's going to only be a quick one this time, just to highlight what's been happening with the fence. The last episode, if you remember, I completed the fence and that was all set. So the next thing was to get the cutters in the right shape and size. So if you remember from last time, 2 cutters now. So that one is set for the width of the tenon. This one is set for the height, and that way I can make everything very repeatable. What I've done this afternoon is just make sure with some scrap pieces that everything was being cut where I wanted and how I wanted. And this afternoon I just wanted to mention how I'd gone about actually setting things up. So it was a case of, with the cutters in the router on the table, just making sure that that cut was giving me the correct size. Sorry, it should be that way around. So if I can bring it up to the camera, and so here we've got that was on the base. So with the scrap piece that I'd been testing the mortises on, if you remember from several episodes ago, that distance is 6mm. So what I needed to make sure was this distance was 6mm, and then the width of the mortise is 6mm. So I wanted to make sure that that thickness was a nice tightish fit, not loose enough to go in, yes, so I didn't need to struggle, but it also needed to be not too free. So that was that, and the depth, that was all right. The depth of the holes for the mortises are going to be 20mm. So ideally the depth of the tenon needs to be about 19.5. So again, so I'm not forcing things. Now that posed a little bit of a problem. I needed to be able to make this very repeatable. So how could I go about that? And I tried marking, let me try and zoom in and I'll show you what I mean. Move that out of the way. What I had thought was, if I actually that will have to be in there, because this is how my thought process went. With the fence in place and the guide in place, I needed to be able to butt up against the fence and then make that 19.5mm. So what I did was mark on the table a line there, but when I tried that, the depth of the tenon was actually about 20.5 millimeters. So again, not very repeatable. The idea I came up with was, see if I can, there we go. From when the cutter was at the perpendicular point to the fence, what I did was set the gauge to 19.5 millimeters, hold that edge against the cutter, and then with a pencil mark on the cutter, the top cutter, 19.5 millimeters. So what I needed then was to make sure that the fence, both sides, was 19.5 millimeters. That was a straight line. That means when the workpiece is flush against this edge, it's close enough, so that is where the cut will start. And then it was just a case of making sure that the outfeed would allow the workpiece to pass. So that was problem number one. Then, so that told me, if you can see on the cutter, 19.5 millimeters from that edge. So that's the mark that I will be using on all subsequent jobs. So it doesn't matter whether I move the fence or not, I can then realign it as necessary. So that was that. Then I came to set up this new arbor with its two cutters, so that the depth of the tenon was 30 millimeters with and I needed 10 millimeters from the base. So after setting that up, making sure that the bottom cutter gave me 10 millimeters from the base, I made the first cut, and that's when I discovered that this top edge of this ventilation hole wasn't quite enough. This locking nut for the arbor was actually pushing into and then burning the fence. There was too much, there just wasn't enough clearance. So what I've done with a router bit, I've just taken a section out all the way through, so that gives me clearance on the arbor. The nut doesn't impinge, and again, 19.5 millimeters from this face will give me the depth of cut. So everything now is very, very repeatable. It's just a case, let me get the actual piece. So this is one of the actual pieces that I'll be using, and that's just a case of butting straight up against there and then making the cut. And of course I will have to be using the face edge and the face sides for all of these cuts, so it will be a case of one, 2, 3, 4. But of course I'll be taking all of the same pieces, all of the pieces through at one time. Now The next process would be to actually cut all of the mortises, all of the tenons, because that is the fixed width and height of the tenons. The actual width of the mortises is fixed because that's the size of the cutter, the bit. The actual length here, that's the variable. So I will be marking all of the legs for this workpiece for the start, and then just making sure that all of them are 30 millimeters plus a little bit, just for that little bit of wiggle room. Not a lot. Again, don't want them too loose, but loose enough so I don't have to force them. And once that's done, we can start on the next big routing job, which will be actually panel raising for some of the pieces. By the way, I thought I'd just show you this. Because the varying cutters on the router have varying speed limits, just here, the new cutter has a maximum speed of 15,000 revs, and the older cutter has a limit of 12,000. Some of them can take 30,000 revs. Rather than keep diving into the instruction book, I thought I'd just make a little note on the wall of the workshop to just remind me what speed is which. So with the router set on number 1, it's about 8,000 revs. Number 3, 16, so just under that will be 15, and that's how I've made the cutter set at the moment. So it's just that little thing that is just there to help me, but you might find that helpful, you might not. So that's where I am this afternoon. As I say, just a short one, just wanted to bring you up to date with what's been happening, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.